Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by developing yourself, developing your skills, your habits, your network, and more. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Hayslip, and today we're talking with LinkedIn growth expert and entrepreneur Justin Welsh. 3.5 years ago, Justin had never written on LinkedIn, but since then, his one-person business has done nearly $1.5 million in revenue with 98% margins. That means 98% of that $1.5 million was profit. He's done this primarily based off of his LinkedIn following. So what's his secret? Consistently writing on LinkedIn. And he has created systems to make this easier, and honestly easy for anybody, because as he will tell you in this interview, he was not a great writer when he started. And nowadays, he does not spend all day, every day trying to come up with content ideas. He's got a system for all of that. And the reason why we're bringing Justin in, the LinkedIn expert for you today, is because one of the things you hear often when it comes to developing your network is that we believe you should be writing on LinkedIn. You should be building in public, learning in public, and you have something to offer. So whenever you do job search, regardless of whether you've been a software engineer before or this is going to be your first time looking for a new job search, it should not be difficult. You should already have authority in the space. You should already have connections. You should be able to reach out to real people without submitting cold applications. And the advice Justin's going to give you today is absolutely going to enable you to do just that. So without further ado, here is Justin Welsh. All right, Justin, thanks so much, man, for being on and agreeing to do this. For context for the listeners, I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time, and no joke, I was actually just looking at my notes from when I bought your LinkedIn course in January, and I had been doing some of my own LinkedIn stuff the months prior, and just noticing that LinkedIn was going better for me than any other platform I've been on. It just seemed like organic reach was really great.
Yep.
And then I took your course, and a week later, I had like 400,000 views on my post. Now, I'm not saying there's some luck there for sure, but you gave me a ton to work with in terms of how to create good content. So I'm drinking this Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid that I'm selling to everybody here today is what I'm drinking as well. So that being said, I gave some background on who you are. I think in a lot of ways you would self-describe maybe as a solopreneur these days. But the thing I really wanted to zoom in on with you today for our listeners is LinkedIn, because we encourage those who are career changing, especially becoming a software engineer, start getting a following, a presence on LinkedIn. And I noticed for you as well, it seems like from your own journey, that was kind of like the initial spark. I remember you've said before in podcasts and in your courses that your main goal in the beginning was just to get attention. So why did you, one, choose LinkedIn? And then two, how did you get so good at getting attention on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Great questions. First of all, thanks for the intro. And, when I started, I didn't really know what platform to choose. And when I looked at Twitter, I viewed Twitter back in 2018 as a place where I got news. It's where I logged on to see what was happening in the world. And so it didn't actually really occur to me to try and build an audience for what would eventually become a consulting business by writing snippets of less than 280 characters. I think that's really challenging. Where LinkedIn, my buyer was on the platform. So I started my solopreneur journey by serving early stage SMB SaaS companies and helping them grow toward 50 million in recurring revenue. CEOs are on LinkedIn. They're consuming content. Yeah. LinkedIn is a long form platform. I can share advice, step-by-step educational, content guides about my experience in the SaaS world. So it just made sense. And one of my really good friends, Kevin Dorsey, who worked for me at Patient Pop, had built a following there. He had 20,000 followers and I had maybe 2,000 connections. And so I saw him, the platform made sense. My audience was there. And I was like, I think if I'm going to go out on my own here, that people are going to have to know who I am. And so I figured I'd do that through writing. And so that's what I did. How I got so good at it is just, I brought a sales leader's mentality. I'm a former chief revenue officer. So a lot of data, a lot of analytics, a lot of building systems and processes, a lot of studying copywriting. It's like anything else. you don't get good by reading a lot of books. You read one and then you go practice. And so that was sort of my mentality.
That's awesome. Yes. From a personal note, I've heard you mention copywriting books. So is there one in particular that you thought was like, this is the book that did it for me?
I mean, I like the classics. I like Ogilvy on advertising. I like Cashvertising. But I don't like, and I think this catches people off guard, maybe often on podcasts. I'm not a big reader, at least a book reader. I read a lot of blogs. I read a lot of, I love Harry Dry's marketingexamples.com. I love Eddie Schleiner's verygoodcopy.com. So I spend a lot of time like taking in micro lessons because I have a hard time paying attention for like 90 minutes. So give me a 4-minute thing, a blog post that teaches me how to do one thing better. And I will go and apply that and start to learn how it, relates to my business and my posts.
Very cool. I love hearing facts like that from people who you would assume would be, these voracious leaders who are reading 10 books a week or something like that. Now for context here, like your LinkedIn journey, it hasn't been going on that long. I think a lot of times when people think about writing content or gaining traction on a social media platform, we think of someone who's like been in the grind since LinkedIn was born and figured it all out. Like you started really in 2019?
Yeah. I tried in late 2018 and it didn't go well. And so I quit. And then I made a commitment to myself in the beginning of 2019 because I knew that I was going to leave my job. And so did my CEOs. I had made them aware of that. And so I put together a commitment and said, I'm going to write here every day for 365 days and see what happens. And so I've been doing it now for almost 3.5 years. Wow. Every day.
That's amazing. And did you in the beginning, were you like literally writing like every day? I mean, I know now I've taken your courses, you've got systems and you can batch things and all that. But in the beginning, were you literally like just writing the posts as you posted them?
Totally. Like I would wake up in the morning and be like, what do I want to say today? What's interesting? What have I thought about? And that sucks. Like, to be honest, no one really, it's a hard way to operate as a content creator is to wake up and be like, what do I do today? But yeah, that was it. I was like, I'll try and wake up and be inspired and have coffee and push something out. And, it works sometimes. It still works sometimes, but it's better to have systems.
You catch some inspiration and you can post it because the moment's right. I think that's one of the things I want to, encourage folks from even my own short journey with LinkedIn has been like, I think a lot of this came from you, honestly, was, or if I can batch this and create systems, it doesn't have to be so overwhelming because I would come days and most of my posts still like nothing blows up, but I can see over time, I'm consistently getting more and more traction and I'm getting better. But I think it is really overwhelming to think of, okay, you have to spend 2 hours a day thinking of the great post. Nowadays, I don't post like you. I don't do the 3 times a day or whatever it is for 7 days a week because it's not my main gig. I do 5 posts a week, Monday through Friday, 1 post on Fridays. I write them all. It takes me about an hour. And like, that's it. If someone would have told me that early on, like I would have started way sooner with these systems. So what was that switch for you? I mean, how did it go from I'm waking up every morning, I'm grinding to get a post out there to, okay, now I'm going to make a system. When did you begin to implement those?
It started when I could prove that there was a direct correlation between the amount of content that I was able to push out and dollars in revenue. And I started to see that like maybe a year in. It's a long story because I've had a bunch of different, like I was a SaaS consultant and advisor who pivoted to like helping people do LinkedIn, to pivoting to helping, solopreneurs and entrepreneurs grow their online businesses. So I've done all sorts of different things on the platform. But one thing when I started selling products on the platform that became clear was the more impressions led to more website visits, led to more purchases. And so the easiest way to get more impressions is, you can write great content, but more content. And so as soon as I recognized that was part of the gig, I thought, okay, well, how do you write more content? And so I needed a system. So it started as a content matrix, which was just topics and structures that I would pair up and jot down ideas and then extend them. And that's turned in now to most recently just a 10-step process that I run through every Monday that not only produces a newsletter, but produces a newsletter, 10 LinkedIn posts, 10 tweets, 10 Instagram posts, a carousel, an Instagram story, and it's all can be done within, one 8-hour workday, and that powers my business for the whole week.
That's crazy. So for someone who's in the position of our audience who, maybe is transitioning careers, they don't probably have to do all that. Like, they don't necessarily need to. Their goal is probably let's create an online presence so that I get noticed, because they want to get noticed by employers or maybe pick up freelance work. So, to say that you run your entire business and you're making, your business is making a lot of money. I don't know what the numbers are, but you've always got these little posts that say, your one-man business is making however many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which is awesome. But they just need to get their first job, more or less. So they could probably break that down into, hopefully an hour or something like that a week, right?
Sure. Totally. I think what I do is, my personality is to be a bit obsessive and a bit structured and systematized. And so that's just how I operate. So I bring my sales leadership background into everything that I do. Fortunately, sometimes, unfortunately, others. But if you're just getting started, you can just do the fundamentals, the basics really well, because as noisy as LinkedIn or any other platform, Twitter or anything seems, there's very few people using it to create. Most people are using it to consume and lurk. Yeah.
When I talk to friends of mine who, maybe I haven't seen in a while, who are checking on how my business is going, I always mention that, my LinkedIn has taken off. I mean, compared to what it was, I went from like 1,200 followers to 6,000 in, 4 or 5 months. And they always react with, "Oh, I didn't know like people wrote on LinkedIn. I thought it was just where you go and search for jobs." So I do think it's a really low hanging fruit for a lot of people, because they don't expect to get value out of it. And then whenever you start seeing that content, it's insane how much they engage.
Yeah. I feel the same way. It's funny when I go home to my hometown. I'm from a very small town in Ohio, and I'm like, "Hey, Elon Musk, Web3, Bitcoin." My friends are all like, "What is that? I don't know what that is." And so it's just a good reminder of like what an echo chamber you live in on social media by who you surround yourself with. And so,
right.
When people think it's noisy, I'm just like, "Hey, there's very few people creating here. Come on in, grab the mic, say something smart, and you will start attracting attention and followers and opportunities."
Okay. So by the time you started writing on LinkedIn, you were already, an accomplished human, right? I don't know what's a better way to say that. You were a productive human. I feel like a lot of, and I don't mean that this may sound degrading in some ways, but my very first podcast episode on this podcast was about like what makes for a successful boot camp grad. Like, why do some people fail? And at the end of the day, it came out to be there's no correlation, right? In our students who, whether they got a degree, did not get a degree, whatever their background is, whether they're good at math, science, whatever, the only correlation is like who they were when they started, right? Are they the kind of person who can follow a regular routine of waking up early, going to bed on time, the normal human productive stuff? That being said, would you consider yourself a good writer before you started this LinkedIn thing?
No. It's not just that I wouldn't consider, I don't think anyone would have considered me a good writer. I mean that like very, very truthfully. And I think there's two questions in here. And so I'll kind of walk through them. Writing is a skill like shooting a basketball, right? Like some people are lucky enough to be born with it and just have it come naturally to them. That is not most people, and that is certainly not me. So writing is just understanding mostly human psychology. It's less to do with writing and more to do with how people make decisions to ingest information. And so studying psychology and copywriting and writing, that's a great way to get started. But also, like, a lot of people ask me, and I think I heard this inside of, it was potentially a question, which is like, I was accomplished before I started. And so often people will say, well, doesn't that give you a giant leg up? Potentially. I see a lot of very accomplished people on LinkedIn struggling to grow. I see a lot of people on LinkedIn who, if I really go through their resume really deeply, don't have all that many accomplishments that they can hang their hat on, growing really fast. And so, sure, gives you a leg up if you know how to write and understand psychology, but it's not the deciding factor.
That's great. Yeah, I think maybe like a follow-up question to that, and maybe this is more of an observation, is because I'm kind of thinking through in sort of listing pushbacks I've had from people, right? That I don't have enough time to write on LinkedIn. We'll get to the I don't know what to say, right? Because that's a big one. I'm not a good writer. And I think a huge one is the confidence piece, right? That they don't feel like they have any authority on anything, especially folks in the position that our students or the listeners of this podcast are in. They don't have any authority on what they're learning. And so, yeah, how would you speak into that? Like if someone isn't, I haven't grown a $50 million sales organization. I mean, what do you write about then? Like if you don't have any of those kind of big accomplishments?
Well, I look at it like if I would have, when I started writing, gone out and said, I've grown a $50 million business, but Mark Robert's grew an $100 million business. And this other person grew a 200 million, and this is $1 billion. I might have said, what do I have to share? I only grew a business to 50 million. Now that's an extreme example, right? But you can use that example and you can translate it to anyone else's life. So maybe you're a junior developer, right? Or someone who's in their first few months of writing code, right? And I don't know that world that well, so maybe I'll say something silly, but
this is good.
Yeah. I mean, sure, you don't have as much to say as the chief technology officer or the chief product officer or someone who's been coding for 10 years, but you certainly have something to say for someone who's figuring out how to write their first line of code, or who just wrote their first line of code but can't figure out how to get a job, or who wrote a line of code in a certain coding language but is trying to figure out a secondary programming language. Like, I would imagine that there are so many different things that people can learn from your journey. So I look at it as a journey. I look at it as being linear. And what I often recommend people do is kind of zoom backwards 2 to 3 years and say, try and remember who you were, right? We all have knowledge blindness. Once we learn something so well, we assume everyone else around us knows it. And that's very factually untrue. And so go back 2 to 3 years. What are the things that you wish you would have known then that you know now? And if you know those things now, there are probably a lot of people 2 to 3 years behind you that wish they knew those things now as well. So that's what I recommend, is share as you're on this journey. And as you grow, they grow right behind you. And so you continue to share things that you're learning and they become a fan on the journey.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think everyone has that, right? They have some growth trajectory. I mean, especially if you're in a spot where you're preparing to, take on LinkedIn and create a whole strategy, you probably have a growth mindset, or you've had one for a little bit now. You can look back on who you were 6 months ago, at the very least, and write to that person who's a step behind you. I think that was one of the big things I got from your courses is you don't have to be the expert, but you are an expert for somebody. And oftentimes what I've learned, even in like our world of teaching people how to code, sometimes that expertise gap is hurtful, right? Like if you are someone who's a 20-year tenured CTO, like you don't know what it's like to learn a programming language anymore, right? Like that was 20 years ago. You have no idea. So you actually cannot relate to that person at all. And I think personally, when I'm looking for experts, right? Like I'm not trying to find, like, I would rather look at your content than look at Seth Godin's, because it's a little bit closer to home for me that, this guy lives in Nashville, he writes stuff from home. Not the same guy as Seth Godin. It's more helpful. One thing I was going to ask on that point was, with what you're explaining in terms of being a few steps ahead, it seems like from what I've read in your content, like that's just one avenue for what to write about, right? There are other ways to write content where you're not necessarily having to position yourself as the expert. Talk to me a little bit about some of those other things that you've talked about before, whether it be I think it's the reporter. You've got a couple others too that you talked about.
Yeah, you can see people doing this really, really effectively. Like for me, I am essentially, and this is a really weird word to use, I don't mean to use it in this context, but like if you're going to be an expert, quote unquote, then you should be writing from a first person point of view, right? Here are things I've learned. Here are things I've observed. Here are problems I've fixed. If you truly can't think of anything that you've done, most people can if you put your mind to it, you can take other avenues to deliver information. So for example, you can be the adventurer, right? And the adventurer is essentially going out on an adventure on behalf of their audience to bring back really important information. I see a lot of younger folks who are like in college or university doing this really effectively on Twitter, where they're like, I just read, the last 10 company statements from Amazon. Here are 8 lessons that I learned. Could be anybody. Anyone can do that. You don't have to have any certificate or expertise or experience to do that. So like, can you aggregate and curate really important information that is helpful to somebody? If you can do that, then you can grow an audience around curation. I think it's more difficult to turn into revenue or income, but you can always pivot as you learn and grow in your own career. The other one is sort of like what I call the reporter. And the reporter is simply, they still curate and they still bring back to their audience. They generally do it through mediums like the one that you and I are on right now. Interviewing really smart people, running a podcast, building a YouTube channel. The tougher part is that you have to have access to folks. So if you can't get access to folks through, this type of medium, I recommend going out and curating. But ultimately, if you want to build a business, I think establishing your expertise and sharing your own point of view with your own name under your own brand is probably the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, that's great. So we've covered a few of the common pushbacks, which is not enough time, don't know what to write about, not enough experience. Talk to me about this system, right? I mean, what's a good starting point for somebody who is, man, I've never written on LinkedIn before. I know a few things on learning to code. I mean, what's kind of an easy first step to creating a system where because I think that's one of the hardest things that I've learned from you, which is how to come up with content, because you can write, maybe 3 great posts and then you're dry.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do as a creator, and I've written this a few times, is instead of trying to say 1,000 different things in one way, learn to say one thing 1,000 different ways. And if you can do that, you can really stay on target, on topic, and you can figure out a way to be interesting more often. And so what I would generally do is start with an idea collection. So I use Notion. Right. It's, popular app, and I have it on my phone. So my wife and I will go for a walk in the morning and I'll be like, oh, we're chatting and there's an interesting topic pops in my mind. I'll put it into my Notion doc. 2 times a week for 15 to 30 minutes, which anyone can generally find. I will sit down and read blog posts I like, watch YouTube channels I like, take a look at their popular videos and try and suss out some ideas that I can add my own flair to, my own take on. So I think the first thing that you can do is you can curate a lot of ideas as frequently as possible. The second thing that you can do is figure out how to say those ideas in several different ways. So let's say, recently I wrote about how to build relationships online with big time creators, right? So how do you connect with these folks that have large followings? So I could write a step-by-step guide, right? Here are 8 steps to doing that. I could write an observation. Here's an observation about the best people who connect with the most people that I see on LinkedIn, right? I could do a contrarian take. Here's what most people think you should do. Unfortunately, that's not right. Here's what you actually should do. That's contrarian take. Create a listicle. 7 of my favorite tools for building relationships online, right? I could do an analysis or a teardown. I took a look at this person who grew from 1,000 to 10,000, and here are 9 things they did really effectively. My analysis of Jim Smith, right? So there's so many different ways that you can talk about the same topic using different structures and styles. Here's how you network today. Here's how you network in the future. Or here's how you used to network in the past. Here's how you network in the present. So it's just like there's a million different ways to spin one idea. And as soon as you figure out what those ways are, you just apply them to micro topics that roll up to your umbrella topic. Because underneath coding or engineering, there's a million things that you can talk about. If you can talk about a million things 7 different ways, you got 7 million things to say.
Yeah, that's great. And I love, like, even in your course, for everyone listening, you've got this spreadsheet where you just basically take your topics and take different content structures and let's just match 2 together and start to write some posts about it. And that's literally what I do every week now is I just take a couple of those things, put them together, and, I bust out 5 posts, sometimes more if I'm feeling extra energetic in no time at all. Okay. What am I missing here? What other kind of encouragement or advice might you offer that I didn't ask about in terms of, those who are first beginning to build a LinkedIn audience? What am I missing?
You're missing the fact that LinkedIn, first of all, let's take a step back and just assume that everyone is a human being and has human tendencies, which means that we're all flawed and we all judge people based on things we probably shouldn't judge them on. So what do I mean by that? It means you got to clean up your profile and look the part, right? So like clean banner image, nice professional headshot, well-written about section, it is a digital first impression. And too often I'll come across folks who are like, hey, Justin, I'd love to get to know you sometime. And I'd love to do some work with you. And it's like a photo with them with a beer in their hand with like their buddies at a bar. And it's like, maybe they're excellent at their job. As a human being, that is my first impression of the person. And again, as a human, I jump to conclusions about what type of person or what type of work this person might do. Whether that's right or wrong, it happens, right? So I highly recommend that you clean that profile up, that professional headshot. Just have your friend take an iPhone camera, put it on portrait mode and take a nice photo. That'll work fine. Design a clean banner. Why should people pay attention to you? Design a clean tagline. Who do you help? What do you help them do? How do you help them do it, right? About section. Braggadocious. What have you accomplished? Talk about yourself. Social proof. Get some recommendations. Like if you can formulate a good fundamentals around your profile, then all the content that you create, the profile acts as a landing page because people come back to your profile. And when they come back there, if they like what they see, there's a million different things they can do. They can hire you. They can reach out to you for an inquiry. They can book you on a podcast. They can buy a product if you sell one. They can make an inquiry on your website, so on and so forth. So I think that's often an overlooked part of developing on LinkedIn.
Do you think, and that's great because, one of the things I learned from you is a good headline. I think my headline has something to do with, I turn career changers into software engineers within 4 to 9 months. And oftentimes I get messages just from people saying, hey, I saw your headline and like, I want to know more about how I can do that. Do you think it's advantageous for, let's say I'm someone who's looking to transition to becoming a software engineer. All I want is a job. I mean, can I put something else other than just, software engineer in my headline? I mean, that makes me unique.
I think so. I mean, I think that LinkedIn has an experience section. If I want to understand what you do for a living, I can scroll down. Like, why you? Right? Like, there's a million software engineers. Why you? What makes you different, interesting, unique? That to me, like I'm talking about business headlines previously, but if you're trying to get a job, like, this is your chance. This is your chance to stand out in a stack of resumes and profiles. Like, why should someone stop, pay attention and say, this is someone I really want to talk to? That's what the space is for. And you have limited real estate above the fold. You've got the banner, you've got the headshot, you got the tagline, you got a little bit of the about section. So use them wisely.
Yeah. And I'm curious, to be honest, and this is me just kind of thinking out loud, that, maybe the two goals aren't that different. Like the goal of, hey, I want to attract attention to get a job, from, hey, what if I do want to go on this full on solopreneur journey where folks are seeing me as an authority to some audience on this topic. I think for me, like, if I were to go look for a job right now, there's no way to have to apply anywhere, right? Like I could get probably 10 offers tomorrow. And that's not bragging. That's just because I've built up this huge following, comparatively to where I was on LinkedIn, and I'm seen as an expert in this space. So I kind of think if you raise that goal a little bit to kind of be more in line with a lot of the stuff that you teach, the getting a job thing is not going to be the hardest thing in the world,
For sure. This is a forum where you can express your expertise. And if you can do that over the course of time, like you have, like I have, jobs become secondary, right? Just like you, if I wanted to go back into being a chief revenue officer or VP of sales or whatever tomorrow, I could make that announcement and have 100 offers, right? And so that's the power of building a brand online. And too many people go out and they use things like, help, I'm looking for a job, or open to work. I understand the concept behind those badges and saying those things, but really the best way to get a job is not to beg for one using your tagline or your profile photo. It's to show people why you should be hired. And I see a lot less of that.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest posts was something to the effect of, stop putting aspiring software engineer in your headline.
I saw that.
Right? Stop saying that you're going to want to be one, and just start being one. Right. And I think you talk about that a lot. Stop trying to offer help and just start helping. Is I think probably the fastest path to actually getting, even if you just want a job, at some point that'll become easy. It's the running a business that will be a little bit more difficult. And I really do hope, personally speaking, that folks who go through this journey and become a software engineer, that opens up a whole new avenue of careers for them. I think everybody, I don't think you have to sign up for like hustle culture and grind all day, grind all night. In fact, I think what I gather from folks like you is you're doing this to get out of that. Like you're transitioned from, hey, I'm going to run a sales organization to I'm going to write on LinkedIn and Twitter and newsletter is sort of the opposite. I'm sure you have a lot more time these days to devote to the things you want to do.
For sure. I mean, my whole mantra, and I often get, people don't like when I say it, but I say it anyway, which is I want to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, all the time. And I don't want to do anything that I don't want to do. And like that may sound childlike or, whatever, but that's my goal. My goal is to enjoy all the things that I'm doing. And it's not to maximize revenue. It's not to maximize income. I'm not trying to scale up. I'm trying to scale down. I'd love to make the exact same amount of money that I make right now and work less. That's the whole point of a lifestyle business. And when you build a big audience on social media, you have leverage and optionality. And when you have those things, building multiple businesses, having that leverage, it all leads towards being able to build a different style and a more intentional life than you might have had previously.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of gets away from our topic a little bit, but I think on a personal level, the things I've been thinking about that you've been posting about are, I read, have you ever read Anti-Fragile?
I have. I don't read a lot, but I know the concept of Anti-Fragile.
Yeah.
I've read some chapters.
To be fair, I listened to it on my way from driving from North Carolina to Texas. So I don't think I could have read it, to be honest. It was a lot of repetition. But one of the main ideas is sort of like this diversity, right? In terms of like your income. And if something falls, I think he gave the example of some guy who, I don't know, worked in finance or something like that compared to his brother who was a taxi driver.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the brother had the more secure job because he got the paycheck every month, but then the market collapsed and the rug was pulled out from under him and he had nothing to do. Whereas the taxi driver, some days he'd make a lot of money, some days he wouldn't make any money, but regardless of the market, he always had work. And I think that's really the future for folks like you and I, and for software engineers, as well. I mean, this option to work from anywhere for anyone, like it's kind of the ultimate value creation right now, and especially as tech is. I mean, it's not going away. The tech market is never going to crash completely. Like we're not going to run out of the need for software engineers at some point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I just wanted to add something on there. We talk in our life about not putting all of our eggs in one basket. It's a common cliche statement. And so we try and apply that statement to everything in our life except for our work. And then in our work, we're like, everyone grind on this one thing. So you got venture capitalists telling CEOs, go all in, while, by the way, they're diversified across a portfolio of investments, right? So saying the exact opposite of what they're actually doing. We've got, folks who are investors saying, diversify your investment. And then other people telling me, but I go all in at work because everyone who's somebody went all in on a big idea, which is complete survivor bias, right? So it's like, yes, the people that you hear about in the news went hard on one idea. What you don't hear about is the other 100,000 people who went hard on one idea and are broke. And it's like, I'd much rather diversify my income across 5, 6, 7 streams. So if one goes away, I'm all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And the other thing in line with that I think about often is, it's really not harder work to work for yourself than it is to have a job. I mean, people have this mindset that, if I go to work, I just show up and I go home and I get paid. But that doesn't last very long for a lot of people. And I really don't think you actually have to work much harder it's a grind in the beginning, right? To like get something off the ground. But after that, I mean, what you talked about just a moment ago with the way your life is right now, like that's a perfect example of working less ultimately. Because if you keep on working a job and chase after promotion, like there is a ceiling, right? I mean, there are very, very, very few careers in which you get a W-2 and there's not a ceiling for your income. And at that top level income, I mean, you have no life. So, and then you get fired, and what do you take with you? Maybe some stock, you take nothing with you. Like none of what you built is actually yours at the end of the day. no one's going to fire you from your newsletter or creating a LinkedIn or your Twitter or your products. It's not going to happen.
I have never lost all of my customers in one day, but I have watched a lot of my friends lose all of their income overnight, being laid off, getting riffed, whatever. And I don't know. I like a safety net.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So for our folks who, you're probably far from that in this journey of wanting just to get started with LinkedIn. But I mean, I'm going to go ahead and plug it for you. I think the LinkedIn, what's it called? The LinkedIn OS?
Yeah, it's the LinkedIn operating system unless you want to actually put that in the name, and then LinkedIn will get really upset. So it's actually technically called the operating system. I still call it the LinkedIn operating system. But yeah, that's the course. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think that's the place to start. I mean, honestly, it's what does it cost right now?
It's $150.
$150. Yeah. I mean, the best investment in a course, and I'm not just saying this because I want to get the affiliate link, which I will put my affiliate link in there for sure. But honestly, it's like of the courses, I mean, I think folks in the developer world are super used to buying Udemy courses that they watch half of, but your course, it goes by so fast. And at the end of it, you've got basically a structure. And I've tried putting some of that kind of, without stealing your course, into our own materials of encouraging students of how to set up their profile and how to write and those kind of things. But I would definitely advise anyone who's hoping to become a software engineer and wanting to get traction on LinkedIn or wanting to go be an entrepreneur. I think just keep going, to start off with that. Is there anything else that you would add here, Justin, before we close it out?
I mean, one thing that's really helpful and it's free is I have a newsletter every Saturday, and my newsletter is called the Saturday Solopreneur. And my guarantee, my commitment to the audience is every Saturday morning at 9:00 Eastern, you'll get one tip to grow your online audience and business that you can always read in less than 4 minutes. Got 30,000 subscribers. It's growing really fast. It's been only around for 5 months. But that's a really tactical, I always call it practical and tactical. If you want to go deeper into the weeds, I've got courses, and you can get all that at justinwelsh.me, justinwelsh.me.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Yeah, it's the only newsletter I get on Saturdays, which is awesome. No one else sends me newsletter on Saturdays, but it's great because I'm usually flooded with other stuff during the week. Justin, man, thank you so much for the time. I really, this was, for me personally, I'm like, I could go off on all kinds of tangents asking about stuff that's unrelated to what our listeners want to hear. But, you're really one of those folks who has made a big difference in my life. And I think in turn, the lives of our listeners and students. So I appreciate the work you're doing and appreciate the time as well.
I appreciate you saying that, man. It's a great interview. You're a really good interview, and I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Awesome. You too.
Well, that does it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. I do hope Justin's advice was helpful and that you will take seriously building on LinkedIn. I promise you, I don't think I will ever have to apply for a job again, at the very least, because, and I'm not even joking, I literally just took Justin's course, used his spreadsheets, followed his advice, and my LinkedIn grew exponentially. Go look for yourself. I bought his course in January of 2020. Go check out my LinkedIn posts and see how they've grown since January 19th, I think is when I took this course of 2020. It is no doubt the best $150 I've ever spent in my life, and I think you should do it too. Full disclosure, if you click the link in the show notes, it is an affiliate link. I will get a kickback for that. So if you don't like me, I suggest you find his course on your own and not give me a kickback. But no doubt the reason why he was on the podcast, the reason why I am really pushing his course so hard is because it really was. It's one of the only courses I've ever taken that have changed my life that much. And I was tickled to death to have Justin on the podcast. I've been such a fan of his for so long. Anyway, that does it. Other things to plug, obviously, Parsity.io. We have another cohort starting in October. The July one is full, which is exciting. We have another round of Dev 30, our 30-day cohort-based JavaScript course. It starts in July, end of July, so definitely check that out. It's in the show notes. And Peter, our beloved co-host, his YouTube channel is always on fire, so check it out. And we'll see you next week.